go into settings, and then you go into, oh, hang on, I got to close my display settings. I have this happen every time IT sets up a computer for one of our people. Go into network and internet. And then you go into, let's see, I might be telling you wrong. It might
Okay,
be,
wait a second. It's coming up in the edge.
oh, is it?
Yeah, so it's
Oh, really? Okay, because I absolutely hate Microsoft Edge. I've had nothing but trouble. So if I were you, I would go to your
Yeah.
system, go to your settings and change that right after this meeting so you don't continue to have that. And you have to change your default browser, and then you have to say, yes, I really want to do this. I don't want to use Microsoft Edge, because they check with you several times to make you feel guilty.
guilting you out of it or into it or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it looks like YouTube is working, and I'm going to start recording the meeting. So whenever you're ready, it looks like we have everybody here, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. And if people continue joining us, then we'll recognize them as they come in. So, okay, so I want to welcome everybody to the Planning Commission meeting for Alpine City on Tuesday, June 16th. We're coming live from Zoom again, and you can watch this meeting on the YouTube channel, and welcome to anybody who's watching there. So we have with us Marla Fox from the city, and Jed Muhlstein, the city engineer, and Austan Roy, the city planner. And then from Planning Commission, we have Ethan Allen and Ed Bush and Sylvia Christiansen and John Mckay and Alan Mcdonald. Did I miss? Oh, Troy Slade. So, and then we have a couple of guests with us who have items on the agenda, Craig Walker and Clark Burgess. That's all I could see on my screen, and I don't see an arrow, so I'm assuming that that's everyone. Okay, so to start with, we're going to have an opening prayer by Ed Bush, and then Troy Slade will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Austan will display an American flag, and we'll just stand. And it's usually best, Troy, if you unmute yourself and the rest of us mute ourselves when we say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we can hear a nice, clear Pledge of Allegiance. So we'll go ahead and have Ed give us our prayer.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we humbly bow our heads before thee at this time. Father, we thank thee for the many blessings. We pray tonight that as we meet as a planning commission, that thy inspiration may be upon us as we make decisions for the future of Alpine, that we may be guided by thy hand. And for these things we humbly ask and pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry, lost my mouse for a second there. Okay, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is public comment. So if there is anyone who has emailed or has commented on YouTube on an item that is not on tonight's agenda, then we can bring that forward now. So Austan, did we have anyone who emailed in?
I have one email here for something. So I did get a few emails, but a couple of them are for items on the agenda. So the one that's not on the agenda is from Kirsten Robison, and she would like to comment on make a comment about Blue Bison. She says, I would like to have this read aloud in the meeting. I live in Alpine and grew up in Highland, and both these once small farm towns have become a city in the blink of an eye. They have already grown way too much. Please do not make it worse, please. And then she says, sorry, I'm just scrolling here. Please do not allow Blue Bison to put a road through Alpine. Stand up for us. We trusted you. Keep Alpine as Alpine. No through traffic. And then she goes on to comment about one of the items on the agenda tonight.
Okay. So we'll save that. Okay. In the chat, Austin, could you put the link to YouTube? For some reason, I can't find it on YouTube, and I usually like to keep an eye on that at the same time as the meeting's going. So if you could just post that in our chat, that would be great.
Okay, copying it right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so then we will go ahead and move to, hang on here. Sorry about this. I moved my screens, and so my mouse isn't traveling back and forth like I am anticipating it. We'll do that. Okay. Okay, so our first action item we have before us tonight is a conditional use permit. This is for Freeman Auto Mechanic, and they want to open an auto mechanic shop on the back end of the Alpine Stop gas station. So if we can get an introduction to that, that would be great.
Okay, yeah, so everybody should know where the gas station is, the one and only in town. So this, so right behind where the gas station is, this is on the west side of the building. There's two garage bays there. I believe the history of this was they were once a car wash type thing, where you could wash your car through their two bays. Over time, it got converted into these garages. And so that's what you see here today. It's currently vacant. You can see that here's the driveway approaches for the two garages over here. And then it looks like there was once some parking in this area here. And then this asphalt was an access here. And this fence here is actually a gate that slides open. And then behind the fence is a area back here where there used to be parking and where you could wash your car and stuff back in the day. Looks like it's just a bunch of weeds now, but that's kind of what's the site looks like today. So again, here's another profile picture. Here's the behind the gate. Here's in front of it. The garage bays are here. I believe they come out on both sides. And so the reason why this is coming here, it's, anything in the business commercial zone typically comes to Planning Commission. It is in the Gateway Historic Zone, which the Planning Commission is the Gateway Committee, which is in charge of, basically what that means is you're in charge of the aesthetics and the look of our Gateway Zone, which is our most of our business commercial zone along Main Street and some of Canyon Crest. Being that this is an existing building, they're not looking to build anything new. The mechanic, I don't believe he's on the call tonight, but when I spoke with him, his comment was, he's not looking to modify the building at all. If he does have a sign, the sign would be, he would post the sign, just maybe have it painted on these garage doors so that you could see it when they're closed. When he's open, I mean, he doesn't have a lot, he's not changing the building at all or adding any major anything onto the building. Should be noted, so on the sides, on the back of the building here, there is existing lighting. So this area is illuminated at night. There's a light on the sides here. I'm trying to point with the mouse here so you can kind of see. So it's illuminated all the way around. He wants to run the mechanic area out of these two garage bays. And then if there's any vehicles that need to be stored or whatever, they would be stored behind this fenced area, which looks like it has some slats in it that kind of gives it some privacy. So it's not readily visible when you're out there on Canyon Crest. As far as parking is, one of the issues or concerns that staff has with this property is parking. We've requested that the applicant provide information regarding the parking on this property. They haven't given us any drawings or anything about where the parking would be located. But there are a few issues to note here. So Typically in the business commercial zone, our standard parking would be, we typically don't allow parking within the front setback area. And so it looks like there could be some parking in this area over here where the mouse is. But that, is that inside the setback area? The building does come out. So I think there's about 10 feet. I think Jed measured it between where the front of the building is and where the property line is, or the back of sidewalk. And so, if they were to have any parking in this front area, that requires an exception from the Planning Commission. When I spoke with the mechanic who's applying, he said that he doesn't intend to have parking out here. He would just have, when he's working on the car, would come in, park in here. He might have one in the driveway here for maybe just a few minutes, and then he'd pull it in and work on it, and then pull it in the back when he's done with it. That's kind of how he said he was planning on managing it. But again, he hasn't provided us with any official parking plan or anything like that. So I'm just commenting on what he's told me. So parking, yeah, is probably one of the bigger concerns that staff has with this property. And again, in the business commercial zone, we try and push the parking to the back of the business. That's why we've had a proposal to kind of change the setbacks in the business commercial zone, is because we want to keep that parking in the back and have the store on the front of the property. And so another concern would be, I'm not sure how busy or what kind of work he's going to be doing on cars here. And so one concern would be, are there going to be cars parking along Canyon Crest Road here? Are we going to see on-street parking, which is something is prohibited in the business commercial zone. So that's not something we want to see happening. So, and it's interesting because our ordinance with regards to parking, for most businesses, we require a certain number of parking spaces. However, for a mechanic shop, we actually just say they can have, instead of saying how many spaces they have to have, we say you can only have so many. So they can have up to 3 spaces per bay, but we don't require them to have parking. So it's kind of interesting, but that's the way the ordinance was written. I'm not sure why that was written that way, but the way it's written is we want to keep the cars, we want to limit how many cars are parked there. And I guess that the idea is to keep junky cars off the property. So we don't want them piling up a whole bunch of old used cars or something like that. So they limited it to 3 cars per bay. So this property has 2 bays, which means he could have up to 6 parking spaces. But again, the ordinance doesn't require him to have any parking. Some other comments here, because this is in a building that already has a business in it. On the other side is the Alpine Stop gas station. And so it would be sharing a building with another business that already has, parking and signage and everything else. With that, our ordinance doesn't say that, so it doesn't say anything that you cannot have 2 businesses in one building. There are a number of buildings in town that do have more than 1 business in them. However, when you do have more than 1 business in a building, you have to consider, how does that affect the other business that's in the building? So does it affect the parking? Does it affect, any other issues? And so being that this is kind of on the back and the back of the buildings here, it kind of feels like there's a buffer there. I don't know, but it's something to consider for the Planning Commission to consider. How is that going to impact the gas station as you consider your recommendation on this? Also, the signs, he says he wants to put the signs on the doors. So in the daytime, when if the doors are open, you're not going to see any signage. Is that acceptable for the Planning Commission? Do you want him to have some kind of monument sign or some kind of sign on the roof? Or that's something the Planning Commission should probably consider, being that it's in the Gateway Historic Zone, and how that would look. And finally, let's see. Yeah, and I guess that, yeah, that's pretty much everything. So this is kind of what has been submitted. I guess we can open it. So that's, yeah, I mean, that's the introduction.
Okay, thank you. So now let's see, we're not having any type of public hearing to do with this. This is just a request for a conditional use permit. And are we supposed to be making a recommendation to city council on this?
Correct, yeah. So just to clarify, so this is a conditional use permit, which means, so in the business commercial zone, we have permitted uses, which are allowed uses. As long as they meet all of our ordinances, those uses shall be permitted in the business commercial zone. Conditional use permits are different, being that they don't have to be granted. So the planning commission could say, you know, this is going to adversely affect, I'm just giving you an example here. We could say this is going to affect the streets and we don't think it's, you know, it could harm Alpine. And so you don't have to, it's not something that has to be approved, but conditional, because it is a conditional use, it does have to come here. And it's something that both the planning commission and city council have to look at. Planning commission needs to make a recommendation on that. Ultimately, it's approved by the city council, or you know, ultimate decision is made there. So
Great. Okay. Well, let's start talking about this. I have tons of questions, but I'll let you guys go first. Other members of the planning commission, go ahead and ask your questions or comments. Does anybody have anything they want to lead out with?
Did anybody else get a call from JNL this morning?
I did talk to them today.
Okay.
Yeah. And so let me bring up the few things that I can see right now. First of all, this is a separate business than the gas station, correct? This is not the gas station adding on to their business.
no. The
Are
gas
they
station,
leasing?
the gas station is the owner of the building, but they would be leasing it to a separate party who would be.
So it's a separate business. So if you look through the Gateway Historic District and any of the requested and desired looks on businesses in that area, it doesn't meet it on several levels. As far as it's supposed to look, you know, as far as if you go through the looks of what it's supposed to have. And sorry, my son, get out of here, son. Oh, he's sneaking his shoes out from under me. So I have a lot of concerns with that. I don't see landscaping. I don't see a storefront. I just see those two bays, no sign. So I don't know, things like that. It just doesn't look like a well set up business. To me, it doesn't. I don't think it would fit the aesthetics based off what is being proposed, in my opinion.
Yeah, now this is Ed. Now driving by it today, I mean, you know, the area is kind of an eyesore as it is.
It is, absolutely.
It is, but I mean, I don't see how I could really approve or recommend doing this without some sort of more of a plan of what this whole thing was supposed to look like. I mean, seems like Austan, you got some information, but you know, I'd like to see before we do this, where would be the parking? I guess I would have a question as to, you know, parking in, you know, on the street or in the front for cars that are waiting to get in, not just the ones that are pulling up. Or is he planning to do that? Or is there any landscaping or improvement? The fence is in pretty bad condition. From what I could see, it's not in good condition. I would just like to see more of a plan of what this looks like. I'm not thrilled with the idea of painting a sign on the garage doors. You know, and doing that, I'd like to see that if you're going to run a business, you would follow the standards we'd have, put a sign out, you know, for it and look like it's a little bit more of a permanent addition to the Gateway District, not just something that's thrown together because the gas station has two bays in the back that they're not using.
If I chimed in, I think I would agree with Ed and say I've just got real concerns that number one, the applicant is not here to discuss his proposal and his business proposal or plan. Secondly, there is no plan that's been presented for off-street parking or traffic management or anything else. There's no plan with respect to signage, what it would look like, where the applicant would have that signage. To me, it's something we should just table unless and until there's additional information brought to the Planning Commission by the applicant.
Yeah. Well, and last, if his proposal includes no modifications to the current building, without modifications or upgrades, I would say that we could even maybe proceed to say that we make a recommendation that we do not allow. This current proposal would not be, recommended because, I don't see how without, like you said, without more information, without showing some modifications to the business, a lot of different things like that. So I think we can table it if we want to, so that he can go back and get some information if he wants. I'd personally be okay with recommending that we deny the permit, and then he can apply again when he has other information. But those are just my thoughts. Any other questions? Do we have? Did you pull out into the packet the historic, having these meetings at 7 p.m. is not kind after you've worked all day. My brain is shot. The historic gateway district guidelines, the historic gateway guidelines, is that in here?
The Gateway Historic Guidelines are not in the packet.
Okay.
Because
it definitely doesn't meet that on multiple counts. So if we wanted to, go through those individually, I don't have the document open right now, but there are multiple areas where this does not meet the Gateway Historic Guideline, district guidelines.
I have a question about that because I did look them up and whatever. And my question is that this is an existing building, right? So
yes.
Do we get to, apply the same modifications as we would, or do we say apply the same standards that we would to a new development to one that's already existing, right?
So that's a good question. A good example would be, so if we have one of these other vacant office buildings in town, and let's say a new business wants to come in and use that space and it's a permitted use within our business commercial zone, we would not look at an existing building and make Gateway Historic recommendations. And so this is kind of similar to that. It is a conditional use permit. However, it is an existing building that's already grandfathered in, if you will. So that's not something we often
make recommendations though on their signage, on the landscaping, on the things like that, particularly something like this where it's actually an eyesore. And if we have anyone do something with this, what we want them to do is improve it. And so, but you're right. It is, there isn't the same requirements as on a new development, but I do think we still have some.
There is some leeway there, obviously, because you're the Gateway Historic Committee. But as far as what is the building made out of, that kind of stuff, you can't make a decision on that.
No, and what the setback is. They can't change the setback.
Signage is something you can definitely make a comment on signage. Does he need to dress it up a little bit to make it look, have more of a storefront on it? That's another thing that you could probably have input on.
A place where business is conducted. Anyway.
Jen, are there building code issues there with having basically a flammable oriented business, probably without the proper fire blocks already built in?
Next to a gas station?
So yes, the fire chief would have to review the application and he would have to make sure their building is legitimate as far as fire safety goes.
That's a good call out, John.
Yeah, I wanted to add something. So, and kind of in researching, because we do have a mechanic in town. And so I went back and looked at the minutes to see what the City Council and Planning Commission kind of required of that business at that time. And I thought it would be useful to kind of cover some of those right now. So they looked at, it was a new building, so setbacks were an issue that was looked at, but also they did require that the fire marshal review the plans to determine if any additional fire requirements would be needed, how that would affect the neighboring properties. And then parking was a big deal at that time. Let's see if there's anything else.
I think they required the bays to be set away from the street, that the business front, they didn't want a bay facing the road.
Yeah, they wanted it to look more like a house from the road because it was in a more residential part of Main Street.
Yeah, and more the historic, again, fitting more those historic guidelines, which is.
Does this building have access to those bays from the back of the yard?
What's that?
Does this building, do the bays have doors on the back portion as well?
Yeah, they do. Yep, it goes through.
They can close off the front.
Double-sided.
Like a storefront and still have access to the bays from the rear.
Yeah.
It looks just like stuff hanging to me, like streamers hanging, plastic streamers, like the back of a garage car or back of a car wash when we looked at the back of it.
That would be a strong preference for me to get supportive of this, is to get rid of those doors on the front.
Make it look like a business.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jed, Austan, for looking up the other mechanic shop in town. I think thought
that would be useful to know.
Yeah.
What the other business had to go through.
Yeah.
I just think that having cars and parking on that north side by those 2 bay doors could be just a disaster right there. I think it's a really, really bad area to have that kind of thing, because it's a really busy area. Everybody turns at the roundabout, and
it is.
Don't like that. So
during school and stuff, it's a highly trafficked area.
And as much as he talks about what he's going to do with that parking space, his clients or potential clients aren't going to know what, whether to park.
It would have to be set up, like you say, it would have to be set up right. I mean, the only possibility, like has been mentioned here, is there's a saving grace that there's actually space behind that fence that maybe could house the majority of the business or something. So see that, doesn't that look like streamers, like when you exit a car wash? Or maybe that's not the back of the bay. Is that the side of the building? That's the side.
This is an additional fence. It looks like there might have been some kind of
okay.
equipment here.
Gotcha.
And they just wanted to keep people
Right.
out.
Do we don't have a sign from the back of we don't have an image of the back of the building.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I did not get an image from the back.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think I looked it up on Google Maps, and I think what that is a chain link fence with the sticks that you put down in them to make it a privacy fence.
Yeah, but it goes all the way along the side of the building then.
That's what it looks like on Google Maps.
I also wonder where the gas station is going to put their dumpster too. I don't know if there's any requirements on that, but right now that is where they house their dumpster.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they would share this area back here and the dumpster would go in this fenced area maybe. I have no idea. They didn't provide us with that information.
Yeah. Okay.
So when I look at our conditional, the application here, I think, I can't, like I said, I can't recommend moving forward. I would think about denying it based on lack of a plan that's actually presented.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they've got to look at what we have in our ordinances, which says odors and noise shall be controlled and as not to have an unreasonable adverse impact on nearby structures. So I'd like to see that explained on there. No more than 5 automobile bays, that's fine. No more stored on the property for 14 days. But then it talks about shall comply with the regulations of the applicable entities, including but not limited to the state of Utah, the Timpanogos Service District, the Lone Peak Fire Marshal, and Environmental Protection Agency. I mean, it's not only the Environmental Protection Agency, but typically mechanical and automotive repair shops are dealing with toxic chemicals that need to be serviced properly and taken off the property. So what is how do I know that the person or group that's proposing this has any plan that's going to any of these applicable requirements in terms of the fire marshal, the EPA, and et cetera in here. So,
And it's unlikely without modifications to the building that any of that would be met to begin with, but. Okay, so any other discussion or a motion that anyone would like to make? And your motion could include tabling it. It could include whatever you want. It could include, recommending it or denying recommendation, whatever. And for those visiting, I always like to point out, because I had a lot of people ask me this after a couple of meetings ago, I can't make recommendations. So that's why I always talk about the discussion and then call for one of the planning commission members to make a recommendation, because I cannot do that. I just get to vote on it, but not make them.
I could go ahead and take a shot at a motion.
Okay.
I would make a motion that we recommend denying this application. That recommendation to the city council because, among other things, there has been no off-street parking plan presented. There's been no signage plan presented. There's been no landscaping or exterior improvement plan presented. There has been no type of fire marshal safety inspection or recommendation provided by applicant. There has been nothing provided by applicant with respect to noise mitigation or compliance plan with the conditional uses. And finally, there has been no plan presented whatsoever with respect to environmental protection compliance.
Second that.
Whoops. We have a motion by Alan Mcdonald. Do we have a second?
John Mckay seconds it.
John Mckay seconds it. Okay. All right. So all in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any who are opposed to this motion, say nay. Okay. So the motion to deny the conditional use permit then carries. And so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is Ordinance 2020-04, which is the business commercial setbacks. And the city council has asked us to take a look at this setbacks for these mixed use buildings. So if we could get an introduction to that.
Okay, I'm pulling it up on the screen right now. So this is an ordinance that the Planning Commission has looked at before, and now it's the City Council sending it back. And there's been some additional language added. So the original motion was to reduce setbacks in the business commercial zone, and the City Council discussed it, and upon review, they decided, well, the ordinance doesn't say anything about mixed uses. So what happens if you have a business on the bottom and an apartment on top? What kind of setbacks would apply in that situation? Because we have different setbacks. For example, if a home is in the business commercial zone, that has one set of setbacks versus a business building in the business commercial zone that has a different set of setbacks. And so the question is, if it's a mixed use and it has both of those in one building, what then is the setback? And so staff went ahead and just kind of threw together what we thought would make sense here. And that's the language that you're seeing in your packet, which would be essentially that when there is a mixed use, whatever the primary use of that structure is, so, if it's primarily a commercial building, that would be the set of setbacks that would dictate. If it's a home and they're running like a daycare out of the basement or something, then it would probably be more appropriate to have a residential setback in that situation. So that's—
Would you be using square footage to determine primary use, or what would determine the primary use?
Yeah, I mean, it would probably be what's on the main floor and what the majority of the square footage is being used for. There's no hard number
yeah, that's my question, is how you would determine what the primary use is.
Yeah.
A good question.
I like the
Austin, I have a
idea.
quick question as well. Do we currently have any mixed use, quote, mixed use applications currently anywhere, even in Alpine?
We do. So if you go, maybe I'll pull up the Google map or county maps here. So if you're at the roundabout, this building, let's see if I don't even know if it's showing.
Straight back, that one right there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's see. This will load. But over here, is it over here? I'm so thrown off.
No, it's right next.
So it's basically right here. There's the Ezra Lee Building. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. It's probably one of the newest buildings in the business commercial zone. Does have an apartment. So the entire upper floor is actually an apartment on that. Oh, here we go. It's loading. So this is the footprint of the Ezra Lee Building. And
Did the other applicant build theirs that came in, what was her name? Shoot, it was a building that Ezra Lee designed and then we had modified it. It was supposed to go in the back center there. Do you know which
so
building?
Ezra Lee designed a lot of these buildings actually. So
Right.
this one here in the front right here was also an Ezra Lee design, but this is actually where Ezra Lee's headquarters is.
Right.
So that's an example of one where it's primarily a commercial building, but it has residential. On the flip side, if you go up, and this map never wants to load, so I apologize for how slow it is. But if you go up to the intersection, right where where purple is, north of City Hall,
200
on
east,
the
200 north.
200 north, on the corner there is a house where they run a daycare out of the basement. And so that's probably a good example of, it's primarily a residential use, but there's also a business being run out of that building, and it is in the business commercial zone. So those are kind of the
Austin?
two things that we see. Yeah, go ahead.
Also the veterinarian building down at the roundabout.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, that's a great example actually. So the vet is primarily a veterinary clinic, but he also lives in that basement.
Hmm.
So, however, because it's primarily a business, we would say that the business setbacks would apply in this. I mean, that's what's being proposed here, is that the business commercial setbacks would apply in a situation. And of course, these setbacks are probably it's going to be for new builds. So it's not, whatever's already built is already built. We can't make them change their setbacks after it's already been built. So it's going to be new construction that's going to be affected by this.
Austin, didn't we decide that if the new build was happening between two existing homes or between two mixed-use buildings that were primarily residences, that building that's being built has to comply to the residential setbacks because of their neighbors?
That it would have to apply to the neighboring. So it would just be.
If you were building next to a residence, you have to comply with the residential setbacks. Otherwise, you're encroaching on someone's residence.
No, so let's see here. This should have all the language.
Okay, I was thinking that we had that in the language. So basically,
So
I'm saying that if there were
two on the screen.
Yeah.
Let's see so this is what you're talking about. In commercial developments adjacent to other commercial areas, the side and rear setbacks will not be less than 10 feet.
Right.
If it's adjacent to two other commercial areas, and then it goes on to say in number three, where a commercial zone abuts a residential zone, the side yard and rear yard setbacks will not be less than 20 feet unless recommended by the planning commission and city council. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, that's what I was asking.
Okay.
Hey, Austin, I have a question for you as well, and this will impact a little bit, I think, the next discussion as well. And this is, maybe I'm the only person on the planning commission who doesn't understand this, and I'm just dumb enough to ask the question. But as I've read through the 2007 Alpine City General Plan, under land use categories, starting on page 12, we discuss residential land uses, and commercial land uses, and then special use areas. I'm trying to understand how the mixed use designation fits into those three categories that we have in the general plan as to land use categories?
Yeah, I mean, I would say most of what we have in Alpine fits into either the first two categories. Special use is, just what it implies. It's special. So there's, I'm having struggling to think of any property.
Can I ask you a question, Austin, that might help you there? So we have things like overlays, like there's an overlay that allows some differences. But my bigger question is this: we redid the entire general plan. Was it not adopted? Is that why we're referring to the 2007 general plan? Because we redid the entire general plan in like 2016 or 2017 and spent the majority of the year redoing the general plan.
Yeah, great question. So, yep, the city council, the planning commission worked very hard for many years on a new general plan. That item has gone to the city council numerous times, and they have not chosen to adopt it at this time. So I don't know what the concerns might be, but
could you follow up? Can you follow up with that on this? Because we clarified these questions that Alan's talking about. Like we went through all of the uses and all of those things and
yeah, honestly,
that. So it's kind of silly.
I wish we could refer to that newer document that was drafted, because it's much clearer, it's much more modern, and it fits what current Alpine is.
Yeah, and if there's a problem with it, then why don't we get it back on our agenda? Because this seems, it seems silly that we are modifying things based off of a general plan that is 13 years old and is not even the current revision of the plan.
Right, yeah, well, yeah. We just have, our job is to just use what's currently adopted, and
right.
That's what we make
exactly.
Our decisions.
So yeah, so that's what I want to do is I want to stop making decisions till they get the right plan adopted. But really, if there's a reason why, then that's great. Then we'll keep using 2007. But if there's just something that needs to be adjusted, or if there was some kind of concern, we should just address that concern. And
there was never a formal motion made on it, so I can't tell you like formally what they said isn't wrong with it.
So
it's just kind of been on the back burner for a long time. And
can I request that gets put on their agenda?
Yeah,
or do I have to have one of them requested?
You would have to have either two of the council members or the mayor.
Okay, I'll just ask the mayor to put it on.
Maybe Shane to put that on there. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would, probably talk to the mayor is probably the quickest route to get it on an agenda.
Hey, Austin, since some of us were not involved in the generation of that new plan, could you possibly make available to us what was the revised plan, the new plan, so we could take a look at it?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I can send you all a copy of the draft that was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. And
that'd be great. That'd be great.
Perfect. It clarified those land uses. And so just like Alan's saying, if mixed use isn't even a definition in our current general plan, we can't really be discussing mixed use unless we want to add a definition to the general plan of that, because that's ambiguous.
Well, yeah, the draft general plan is irrelevant at this point for this specific item on our agenda. So we just have to use whatever our current ordinance is to make a recommendation based on what we're looking at tonight.
Right. But so what zoning allows mixed use? So I think that's the question. So
it's a permitted use within the business commercial zone.
Okay. So business commercial zone can have mixed use.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the commercial use in the existing plan says that, and this kind of gets back to the same question. It says in which the primary use of the land is for retail, and those are commercial uses. So whatever we define, or whatever is defined as that primary.
Mm-hmm. It could be the number of hours that it's something. It could be the square footage. I think we need to define how that primary use would be determined.
Yeah, the Ezra Lee Building is a good example. The the apartment square footage, and I don't have exact numbers with me right now, but it was a very significantly small portion of the overall square footage of the entire building.
Sure. So what were the other things in this that we're looking at that they sent back to us?
So they liked everything else. They liked the setbacks that were being proposed. The one thing that they weren't a big fan of was, I guess, no, I mean, they just weren't unsure of is how do we handle mixed use? So they weren't sure how to handle that. So staff has put together this proposal here, what we thought, the primary use would probably be a good way to go about it, but that's just a recommendation from staff. Ultimately, planning commission should, we choose whether they want to recommend that or alter that, change that, amend that, or maybe just change it completely.
Yeah. Does anyone else have another criteria that they think would be any better than primary use to determine what the setbacks should be?
Well, I think the primary use criteria is probably good and good verbiage. I guess I think what needs to be here is a definition of primary use, because I think that was your point, Jane. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what primary use means.
Right. I agree. So we could modify that within this statement here, where if the primary use based off the percentage of square footage of the building or something along those lines, we would need to add some type of a clause in there.
I personally would like to take this up at another meeting when we had a definition incorporated of what constitutes primary use. So it's clear to us and it's clear to any applicant.
Now you've got dedicated use in either residential use or commercial use, and then you have shared use that would be probably considered on both sides. So how do you segment that?
And those are the definitions that actually exist right now. So is the term primary use in other places in the code, Austin?
We can check and see if that's in the definition. I don't believe it.
Yeah, that's what I want to know is if that's a term that's used multiple places in the code, then we should probably propose that it's added to the definitions and give it a definition.
Yeah, I mean, if it's it could be worthwhile to add that something to that effect in our definitions here.
And then that would clarify this, and then we could use that in any of the other places where we might have something like this.
So permitted use is defined, but not primary use.
Mm-hmm. The other thing you could do is you could change the word to say, if the majority of the square footage is used for commercial, and if the majority of the square footage is used for a dwelling. So you could take the word primary use out and actually put the definition that you're talking about in there. And then that would eliminate, the need to, you just wouldn't have that term used. You would actually be defining it in the sentence.
Yeah, but at the same point, Jane, you include primary use in the overall code definitions and then define primary use. Just did. And that would be good.
Exactly. Yep. Either one of those would do it. So I think either one of those would work to either propose that we add it to the definitions, or which seems like it may be a cleaner way of doing it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we should put it in the definitions, because then later on, if we ever have to reference or make another part of the thing, we can just use the definition of primary use without having to read it.
Yeah, I agree. I like that idea.
Does that require a public hearing, or can we just do it?
Does it require a public hearing for what? I'm sorry.
Can we just make a motion in this meeting?
Yeah, so you can make a motion. So this item is we've already held a public hearing for this ordinance change.
If we add a new definition though, do we have to have a public hearing to add the definition, or can we just go ahead and say we recommend that added to it?
You can motion that it be part of this ordinance proposal. It can be an amendment to this current ordinance that's being proposed.
Okay.
I say we do that.
I think that makes sense to me.
think we can move ahead. We're mostly done, so let's move
So
ahead.
how would you, I guess, from a staff standpoint, how would Planning Commission like to see that definition? Would it be a square footage thing, or how would you like, which direction would you like us to draft? If you want us to draft some language for that, which direction would you like us to go?
Well, it seems
Square
like
footage, but
what
what
we
if
do
it was
with a
really
lot of things is
close?
go and see what in a lot of other city codes look like. See what the general consensus is out there as far as determining primary use, because I'm certain that we wouldn't be the first ones to grapple with that. Look for a definition that seems to best fit with Alpine and its objectives, and then maybe we table that until we can review next time these changes along with a definition of primary use. My suggestion anyway.
That would be fine as well. So we just need a
That's a
motion.
good suggestion, Alan.
Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion?
I was on mute. I make a motion that we recommend tabling the modifications to the Ordinance 2020-4 business commercial setbacks until staff can create a new definition for primary use.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by John Mckay. We have a second by Alan Mcdonald. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed to the motion, say nay. Okay, so that'll be great. That should be a simple thing to modify, maybe do a little research on for us, Austin, and bring back. I don't think that's anything that is in a big rush to get done. So I think that should be fine. Should be a simple thing to do. So the next thing we have on the agenda is the discussion of the Bangerter and Burgess properties. And I will let whoever is ready to talk about that go ahead and introduce it, and then we can discuss it after that.
Okay, yeah, so we're talking about the Bangerter property. This is on Alpine Highway. Probably a good idea if I get a visual here on the screen. So it's just on the bend as you're coming from 800 South northward. This is part, okay, so I have it highlighted here. That's the property that we're talking about tonight. And as you have seen earlier in the meeting, we do have some invites that are here that would potentially be impacted by that. And so across the street here, we have Clark Burgess. Let's see, whoops. Okay, there we go. So this is the Burgess property.
Mm-hmm.
And he's here with us tonight. So depending on whatever is decided with the Bangerter property, that could also impact that property. And so he wanted to be included in this discussion. And likewise, we have the Walkers, and they're also here tonight. Let's see, it's coming up. Okay, so here's the Walker property. And so these are all fairly larger parcels, and they're all along this stretch of the Alpine Highway. But again, what brought this to the meeting tonight was the Bangerter family is coming to Alpine City. This is a 27-acre parcel, and they are getting ready to sell it. But before they do that, they would like the city to have a say on what happens with this. Does the city have a vision for this? And if so, does the city want to, do something with this property before they sell it? Basically, they're just kind of giving the city an opportunity if we wanted to change the zone, we could change the zone. If we want to do, whatever the vision is for the city, that's something that, the planning commission, that's kind of one of the purposes of the planning commission is to outline a vision for the city. And so they wanted to bring this here for discussion, and hopefully kind of give some direction as to what the city would like to see done with this property. And they would be willing to work with the city any way the city sees fit to make this a benefit for the city and for them, for all parties involved. And so
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to follow that up with Julie Beck, who is a Bangeter, invited me to come out and walk the property today and take a look at it, and give some ideas and basically explain to us why, that they wanted to talk to the city about this. And so I'll kind of go over that, and I can show some of the pictures that I took of the property. But before we do that, I just wanted to see if Clark had anything that he wanted to add, or Craig have anything that they wanted to add as far as their desires for their property, their interest in what happens in this area or anything. So Clark, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, we've had this piece of property for 118 years. That's a long time to be an Alpine. Yeah. So we feel it's a legacy that our family has had, and we want to continue this legacy. We currently don't have any plans to sell it, but we want some options of, we think that this multi-use option gives us more opportunities down the road to do something besides, 1 acre residential lots. So that's why we thought it would be easier. We talked to Austan several times, and we thought it would be easier to do it all in one swing instead of taking each piece at a time and having to do this each time for both us and the Bangeters. And that's why we invited, Craig Walker to give his input and see where they're at, because they're kind of similar to where we're at probably, but I'll let Craig speak for himself on that too.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Craig, do you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. So I'm Craig Walker, and I've been asked to speak on behalf of the family. So similar to the Burgesses, we've been in Alpine not quite as long as they have, but my grandfather ran a dairy farm on the area that we were discussing earlier where the gas station is. And so this property was part of what my mother and father purchased to build their home there. And you probably all know it. It's right across from that gas station. Discussing it with the family, obviously we're really invested in Alpine. We've lived there for a long time. We want to see the best use of the property. We haven't made any decisions about exactly what we're doing. We're not asking for anything. We just want to have a say in the conversation.
Okay, great. Austan, can we bring up like a Google Maps or where we can actually see the actual landscape, like Google Earth? I guess that's what it's called.
Yeah. Let me
and then I'll see. I just went out there this afternoon, so I was going to see if I could pull up some of these pictures. I'm assuming, is it okay if I show pictures that I haven't submitted to you beforehand, or do I have to submit images beforehand?
No, you can. I mean, it's kind of like us putting up on the screen, so it's being recorded right now. So
okay. If I can get mine to work while you bring yours
up. I'll stop screen sharing and let's see if you're able to
go ahead. Go ahead and do your screen share first. I'm trying to get my images off my phone and onto my computer.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to switch computers on my work computer.
Here's the aerial image that you've requested.
Okay, great. So what you can see is the green area is obviously their farm land that right now they do in hay, but property also is beyond that. And can you show us on that where the river goes through there? If you zoom forward, okay, there we basically follow the tree line.
Right here, yeah.
Yeah, and you can see where the river is. And that area also, it backs an area which we have called the corridor. I'm trying to remember what we call that. And we've got trails going through it. You could basically park on the opposite side over there and go through that. And then we've got Alpine City trails that go through that center area. And so there's city property that actually backs that. So public open space. And then behind their home, so their home is to the right there. Yeah, that's their home. And if it goes off and then kind of it drops down towards that river. And so there's some really beautiful areas back along there. And she showed me some of the different things that just as ideas. So just kind of brainstorming. And what she expressed was, their family could just wait and just sell this to a developer and have it be 1 acre home lots. But since it is this one large area left in the city, she just wanted to have some brainstorming about what other kinds of things could be done. And so I asked her, what kinds of things would you be interested in? And she said, I'm just one of 10, obviously, that have an opinion about this, but there's a beautiful area where an amphitheater could be. There could be something similar to like a Tuacahn type area in there, or like what they have in American Fork. There could be an event area. There could be something for a senior citizen, a fitness center type area. There's just a lot of space. And then there's also the reason those things really don't work well anywhere else in the city, even if there was space, is you have to drive through neighborhoods to get them. So the advantage to this space is that it's right off the main highway. And so, the access to it would not put undue burden on a neighborhood. But they said, they would be open to some commercial areas, possibly more near the front of the property, or some mixed use, some maybe some housing that would multi-use housing, what it's called, multi-unit housing, or just a variety of different things. And so they don't really have themselves locked into any one idea, but what they wanted to do is bring forth the option to the city to say, hey, before we sell this to a developer who's going to have their own agenda of what they want done, would the city like to create a vision for this? And we would love to work with the city to make something that's maybe lasting, something that leaves somewhat of a legacy. And I thought she brought up a great point, which was, she said, when they first moved here, and I know the Burgesses will have the same story, and the Walkers as well, but they didn't have the services, water, sewer, all those types of things. And the citizens back then did a bond and really sacrificed and paid that bond off. And now we have the infrastructure that the city has, and of course we all benefit from what they did. And she said, I'd like to look at something like that. Like, here we have a chance to do something to maybe really add a unique aspect to the city. And so they basically want to know what are some of the ideas that the Planning Commission might have, and anything we do, it would need to be rezoned. Right now, if we do something besides just residential, right now, Austan, do you want to show us where the commercial district ends?
Commercial district ends right here where the art center is.
Okay.
This area.
And is there anything on the other side of the street there on Highway 74 that is commercial?
No.
Okay, it's all on the north side.
On the north side of the road, correct, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And so if we wanted to possibly extend the commercial district out along one side or both sides of South Main Street there and out onto the Alpine Highway, then, you know, that opens up all kinds of possibilities for the city as well as for these landowners to do something a little bit different. And
Hey,
so.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so you bring up a good point. So if we were to rezone, you could currently rezone this as business commercial, which is in accordance with our current development code and general plan. However, if you wanted to see like a mixed use, which is something that's been proposed and Mr. Burgess and I mentioned that earlier tonight, that would entail the planning commission would have to go back and amend or the general plan to allow for a new zone type, which we don't currently have in our current general plan.
What does an overlay zone do to the commercial zone? Because that's what we have for the senior housing, is there's a senior housing overlay on the commercial zone. Yeah, I mean, that could be another way to do this. You could say we rezone it. That would involve several steps. So you'd have to rezone it as business commercial. And we'd have to go back to the general plan and create a new overlay for a mixed use. Okay. And then that would actually be a longer process if you wanted to do an overlay, but something that could be done. Right. And so that's another possibility. So anyway, the idea is for us to brainstorm and just say, are any of us, how do you guys feel about changing, you know, potentially changing the zoning in this area? What types of things do you feel like would be an addition to the city as the average age of the city maybe gets older, or what is the city lacking? Do we feel like people, depending on what this is, do we feel like there would be patronage for it? You know, where it could be something bigger than just one store. So, okay, I'll quit talking and you guys start giving me your ideas.
Well, I'll chime in briefly and then hold my piece. I've probably talked enough tonight, but the only thing with that, Jane, is I would say that you could ask 99 people and we would probably give the Bangerters and the Burgesses 99 different opinions. And everybody's just chasing their tail. I mean, to me as a planning commission, we have guidance on this in the way of a general plan. But this brings me back to, I mean, the only general plan, I guess, that that is actually in force is from 2007. And I don't know what the 2017 general plan that has never been adopted actually says. But if as a planning commission, we go back and look at guidance given to us by the Alpine City General Plan of 2007, I'll just briefly note the following, and I'll read right from the plan. From page 7, it states, future commercial development projects should be confined to the existing business commercial zone. However, the possibility of expanding the business commercial zone may be considered by the city if the city determines it is necessary or in the best interest of the city to do so. The most logical area for expansion would be to the south of the existing business commercial zone, parentheses, south of the roundabout, which obviously these properties are. Apparently back in around 2007, there was a survey taken of Alpine residents. And on page 13 of the general plan, it states, in the 2005 community survey, 58% of respondents were in favor of commercial growth, and the majority of those who favored commercial development felt it should be located downtown and south of the roundabout. When asked about specific types of commercial growth, 58% want places where they can dine out, and 44% want a recreation center. Now, if we were to take a survey of Alpine residents in 2020, you know, I don't know what they would want or what the percentage would be. This is just a survey that was apparently taken prior to preparation of this general plan back in 2005. So as far as any type of, for whatever good that does to these landowners, those are the expressions, I guess the most clear expressions we have of city intent as contained in a general plan that's now 13 years old.
Yeah, and I believe that stayed the same in the updated and unadopted general plan. And so I think two things. One is that you just answered for them is, yes, this is an area that has been considered as a possible business commercial area. If we were to add to the business commercial area, this is the area where it has been listed in the general plan as potential addition. Yeah, there's a great view of it. And it is a nice chunk of land. And obviously the planning commission is not going to tell the developers to what to do with their property, but we do help envision through the general plan and through, when a citizen comes forward and says, what is something that would benefit the city? That's definitely something that we can give our opinion on. This is something that's not, are we meeting the code? Are we doing anything? This is more of a brainstorming session of, what kinds of things, one, are we open to having this change into a different type of zone than just commercial? Than just residential? Or would we rather just have it be 1 acre houses and just pave over it and let it be a development?
Well, either way, we're talking about it being a development, right? That doesn't, 1 acre is actually less development than making it commercial.
Well, right, but that's the point is it could be residential or it could, with commercial, there has been requests by some people to say, would Alpine ever consider some different styles of homes? Or there was a committee and even a tax study done, I want to say 10 years ago, about what things could the city actually develop a tax base? And could there be an area of town that had enough commercial activity in it that it actually could generate a tax base to support something like a senior center or other types of public uses that would be in addition to the city.
So,
a quick question on this, because I think it's relevant to even considering what kind of use this could be. Austan, up in the north, sorry, I guess you can't see my cursor. Up in the northwest piece of this property, is there on the master plan a connection envisioned into, I think it's Ranch Drive, that would then go north?
It's right off 800. So if you go down 800.
Are you okay? You say
where Ranch Drive just dead ends there into Dry Creek.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything on the master plan or master streets plan about any connection through there into this Bangirter piece?
Right on the street master plan, it shows a future connection of Ranch Drive that moves along the south part of the property and then connects into what's labeled there as Main Street. But
yeah, so in the past, there's been some discussions about putting a possible bridge. So this is actually quite a steep drop off.
It is
where Ranch is and over here, and so there would have to be a bridge built to cross that. There has been discussions of possibly extending Ranch, building a bridge, and then having a road that comes down and connects into 800 South. It should be noted that this property, a big issue with this, that whatever gets developed on here has to deal with, there's a large gas line, easement that runs through here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I see the electrical. So show us where the electrical lines run through, and then there should be a gas line easement as well that was granted.
Jane, I'm reading the comments on the YouTube, and one person said, when are we going to read the public comments?
Okay. We'll take a look at those. It's not a public.
To the public that this is not a public hearing. This
Right.
is just a discussion we're having, right?
Thank
So
you.
certainly would like public input as we go along.
Oh,
But
absolutely. And this is very, very, this is just a discussion. So this is not, nothing here is, this is a brainstorming session, I should say. And we would love to have any public input submitted. I know we've received some letters from citizens, and we should all read through those and discuss different ideas with citizens. But this is just something that we're discussing. And as Ed mentioned, this isn't a public hearing. So normally in our meetings, we would not just allow comment at any point in time. But it's kind of different with this YouTube channel because it kind of, we kind of get a social media chat stream going off to the side, and we will be happy to read through those, but it won't be part of the meeting. So thanks, Ed, for bringing that up.
Hey, Jane, can I say something?
Yes, please.
I know I've been quiet tonight. There hasn't been a whole lot.
You have been.
Tonight, but
Wasn't sure you were really there.
But I will say, Ed's right. The street master plan does show a connection from Ranch Drive over to the Alpine Highway. It does not show it going on to 8th South. I know there's been chatter in the past about it going to 8th South, and maybe that is a potential or a possibility in the future, but the master plan doesn't show that. Also, the trail master plan does show trails connecting in the area as well. Earlier, you talked about how we have existing trails going up the Twin Rivers drainage.
Yeah.
The trail master plan also shows connection to that trail, and it shows it going to 8th South, Alpine Highway, and also further down the Twin Rivers drainage or Dry Creek, and then back up to Westfield Road. So that property plays a key role in all of those connections for roads.
Yeah. Thank you. Right now, what is public open space right there? I know we've discussed that. We had that one time at Planning Commission, whether or not we were going to maybe do some asphalt on some of those roads.
So if Austan could pull up the trail master plan, it's just on the city website, on the planner's website. It shows the open space fairly well. It's basically all of the Dry Creek drainage, plus the Fort Creek drainage going up to Timberline Middle School.
So do we have any idea of, in our existing business area, what, how well we're leasing that all the office space that it's now being built and existing?
That's been brought up several times in other meetings. I don't have a percentage of that. Essentially, in the past, if someone wants to build an office space, we don't deny them the ability to build what they want in their commercial zone. We expect that they kind of do their due diligence and if they think that's a wise decision or not. I think, go ahead.
Can I ask a question while he's looking that up? So I understood the city had a while ago, and I wasn't involved, but and Shane would know more, but they did a study on the water usage on the size of the lots, a 1 acre lot versus half-acre lot.
Yes.
Does anybody on the Planning Commission have any statements on that? That's water usage for a smaller lot.
Jed, you know that, don't you?
I would have to refresh my memory on that study, but from what I recall, it was somewhat of a wash.
Because you had 2 half-acre lots.
Yeah, if you have smaller lots, you're using more culinary water, which robs secondary water. If you have bigger lots, you're using more secondary water and less culinary water. But as far as development versus irrigated properties, it's basically a wash.
Okay.
So, for example, the Bangor property, they probably use their big
their pivot.
Yeah, their pivot. They probably water couple times a week, I'm guessing. I actually don't know.
Yeah.
And they put out a lot of water when they do water. Now, the difference is you put a bunch of homes in there and they water smaller areas, but they water more often.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a wash.
Yeah. And with our orchards, you know, on both our properties, we're using probably a lot of water. I mean, all pressurized, but it's still a lot of water use.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
And all of these properties do have water rights and the water to go with them.
Yeah, and I should say too, these properties have been planned for in the water master plans to be used. I mean, as they're zoned right now, they've been planned, and
Yeah.
we can take care of them as far as water needs go if they were developed as they're currently zoned. So
Right.
we should be fine there.
Thanks. Okay, so we're looking at this, the trail plan.
This is the trail master plan, correct?
And
So,
you can see
So
the green, or the green is the open space.
one quick note that I forgot to mention when I introduced this is, so see that where this red proposed trail runs. So these two parcels here, they're each 1 acre, are also family members of the Bangeter. And so when they
Right.
sell this property, they also want to sell these 2 pieces here as well.
right.
So something to consider.
And the easement, is that big long triangle that's showing, rectangle that's showing there?
Yeah, so this is the easement. You can see how it keeps running all the way down, and you know, it goes all the way as far as you can
Right.
see, both directions. So that's the
Is
easement.
is the electrical right on top of that?
There are power lines that run
Mhm.
almost right on top of that. So that area, you know, you probably can't build anything on top of that. We'd
Right.
have to check with Metro to see exactly what could go on there. Can a road go on there? I don't know.
Mhm.
Those are things we'd have to discuss with the owners of the easement.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
So, you know, I live in this area, so I know a lot of the
Yeah.
neighbors are excited about the fact that they don't really want a road to 8 South.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, and
And-
this, depending on what type of, what would be coming into 8 South, a few homes or, you know, something else, that's,
Right. I mean,
but
so
it also allows for the trails to go through there too, though.
right. And I think everybody would love trails
Mhm.
and they would
Of
love,
course.
but I mean, that was already zoned 1 acre lots and it's
Mhm.
surrounded by 1 acre lots. And so to
Mhm.
me, that property probably shouldn't be changed because it's
Mhm.
kind of it's in and amongst what it should be, right?
Mhm.
Everything around it is the same.
I agree with Ethan. I would think that if we were to propose trying to get a road, I would like to see the road go over and connect into Alpine Highway, not into the neighborhood.
Yeah,
You know?
or is it necessary to go anywhere there? I
Right,
mean,
right.
could that, there's kind of a trailhead right there for that access to this, what we call the corridor, Alpine corridor that kind of went through here in these trails, because it's kind of a long, thin, and so, you know, and it's very steep, like it would not be cheap to put a road through there. It doesn't make sense to me at all that we would want to put a road through there.
I would think that the 2 properties that are in that neighborhood, we would want to keep zoned to be the 1 acre residential also, right? Independent of the large, you know, plot of land and that, you know.
Well, yeah, surely you definitely wouldn't want to put something that's not residential right between 2 residentials.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, so that kind of shows what's happening with the open space. And again, and some of those trails look like they're on their property, on the property right here in that area. I guess you can't see my mouse either, but if you go up right above that, is that on an individual's property? Is that the Alpine Art Center, or what is that right there?
yes, that's the Alpine Art Center. So our trail does go onto the Alpine Art Center property.
Okay.
They're okay with that. They actually really worked with the city and planning this trail and where that trail goes. And so but yes, it's not all on city property. And when you get down in here, it gets tricky because the stream kind of meanders back and forth. And so,
Yeah.
you know, finding the flattest, best route for a trail through there gets a little tricky.
Yeah. Jed or Austin, do you have the copy of the tax study that was done about, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago? We spent a fair amount of money on a professional tax leakage study, which showed what type of business may succeed in Alpine, and if Alpine wanted to increase a tax base to support, you know, the citizens. And I thought that would be worth everyone looking through and seeing that. The other thing that I think would be interesting to see is the aging of the population of Alpine and what might be the future needs of the citizens of Alpine as the community ages. And those are just a few of the thoughts that I've had.
Would it be appropriate to do another survey? I mean, because that one was done in what, 2005?
Absolutely.
That's what I'd love to see, because it's such an
Yeah.
opportunity I think we have. And
Exactly. And whether we ended up deciding that, you know, it's not in the best interest of the city and we should leave it, or we decide otherwise, this is the opportunity. And they're not in a big hurry. It's not like the Bangerters aren't ready to sell this year or anything, but their mother is 96, I think, or 94. And so, you know, while they're not running out the door to sell, and some of their family members, you know, every one of them was going to have a different idea maybe of what they want to do as well. But they would like to, you know, just start talking about it. In the past, I know it's been brought up several times when we were discussing the master plan of what could go in that area. And at that time, I thought, well, that's great to talk about what can go in the area, but how do you even know if the landowners want to do that? You know, it seems a little funny to say what you think belongs in an area, but they're basically just saying, we would like to open a discussion with the planning commission, with the city, possibly with a group of residents within Alpine, to just open a discussion about what the different possibilities are.
You know, Jane, if a few of us were just throwing out opinions, you know, mine briefly would be, and I see a little bit of a difference between the Bangerter property and the Burgess property. I guess I would just speak a little bit to Craig and to Clark. You know, I personally see the Burgess property as being on the other side.
Oops, I think Alan froze, or I did.
Yeah, he did freeze.
Oh, shoot. Maybe, so does anyone have his cell phone number that could text him? I think I have it. Let's see here, I'll just text him really quick. While we're waiting for Alan to come back from the land of the frozen, Alan, let's just say you froze. I did want to mention that in the past, when we've looked at different changes with the Bowery, with that corridor trail that we just looked at, we actually, as part of the Planning Commission, we said, hey, let's meet there at 6:30, and that the Planning Commission will begin at 6:30 at this location. We can walk through and look at this, and then we'll meet back at City Hall to continue the meeting, or at the end of the meeting. I think we've done that. And I think that might be something that we should do. And then we could go look at the Burgess's property, the Walker's property, and the Bangerter property, and they could kind of show us, you know, this is where this property's at. This is, you know, and so I don't know if you guys would be interested in that. I thought it really changed. It really helps you to see it in person for me.
I'd love to have you anytime you want.
Okay.
I'm out on the farm every day working.
Yeah.
Anytime you want to set up a time individually or as a group, I'd love to have you to show the farm. Okay,
great. And Craig, would that be okay if we stopped
Yeah,
by?
we feel the same way. It'd be great to have you.
Okay. Oh, the Alan's back. Oh, and his mouth moves too, but we can't hear you, Alan. Last point, you got to get your mute button. You're still on mute, Alan.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Now your mouth
There
moves
we
and
go.
we can hear you.
All right. Well, geez, I already took everybody's time. So
No problem. We talked while you were gone.
I would just be really brief then. I think I just mentioned the Burgess property seems to me to lend itself much better to a residential application because of what's in and around it.
Mhm.
The Bangor property, particularly because as you go north, you hit businesses, well, north, northeast. As you go north, northwest, you're buffered by Dry Creek and all of that area. So you're really not running up against other residential so much. It seems a logical continuation of the business district. And it seems to me it could be an interesting area for restaurants, for a fitness center, for some type of mixed use residential, which might include something like the 55 plus area that we had just, north on Main Street there, where they were nicer, very nice, nice twin homes, but on smaller properties, something where, you could have residential that was perhaps, very nice, but a little denser, where you could walk to restaurants, walk to a small grocery, walk to maybe an amphitheater or some entertainment in there, walk to a fitness center. That type of mixed use, I think, would be, if we're going to do that anywhere in Alpine, that would be the spot to me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Also, and then the other thing we mentioned, Alan, was that we would love to, as a planning commission, and we can invite city council as well, maybe go stop by Clark Burgess's property and take a better look at it, and Craig Walker's property, and also the Bangerter's property, and just kind of walk the lay of the land and get a real feel for what is there to help us make a good decision. Because sometimes looking at the squares and saying, okay, here's where homes start, it's different when you go stand there and you're like, oh, okay, I see. These are really close. Or, oh, there's kind of a buffer. You just see it better. And so everyone seemed to be agreeable to that idea. So since you weren't here, hopefully you're also agreeable to it. All right. So Austin, could we look to putting that on the agenda in one of the next meetings?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you want that on the next agenda or when we want that, but as Jane and I, we discussed on the phone earlier today, that would be part of our meeting. So we consider, we can't all meet together and have it be, in order for it to be a legal public meeting, we'd have to announce it. It'd have to be on the agenda, and we would meet there at a specific time, and it would be, posted in an agenda.
Yeah. And so for those listening, that's so that people on the planning commission or city council can't get together in groups of more than just two people having a conversation. You can't meet, because that would be having a private meeting. And when we meet to discuss things, it has to be a public meeting. And so we're very careful about that. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to the discussion for tonight? I mean, I think, I don't know, Jed and Austan, if you had other things that you thought we should bring up other than just introduce this idea. And okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to introduce it and then just make sure that we're aware of the aqueduct easement that goes through there. And also, the street that goes through there, Highway 74, that's actually not a city street. That's UDOT owns that. So it's the Alpine Highway.
Okay.
And so having access onto that, we may need to communicate with UDOT. So that's just something, I just wanted to get that on your radars.
Yeah, that is good to know. At what point does that change into an Alpine street?
I believe it's a roundabout, but Jed can correct me on that. I don't know.
That's correct. It's at the roundabout.
Interesting. I didn't really think about that before. So good to know. Okay. Well, I think that was a great start to the discussion. I mean, it's just to have everyone start kind of brainstorming, and we can certainly, like I said, take any kind of public comment as through the public can reach out to us by phone or by email and just give us their thoughts. This is not going anywhere fast. So I don't want anyone to panic and feel like that, the city's out to do a new development and change everything. This is just the very, very beginnings of a discussion that we've been asked to have. So.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, Jane, if this does move forward and there is let's say a zone change or something of that nature,
Yeah.
there will be a public hearing notice sent to all affected parties. So, there would be a sign posted on the property, there would be letters sent out, there would be all sorts of stuff like that. So when it comes to a zone change, there is a procedure for that. So just those that are
Yeah,
watching.
nothing's going to sneak through without people knowing about it, for sure. There'll be plenty of time to do that. So I think we should just move on then, Austan, to the discussion continuation of the limit on the size of lots and structures in the city. I believe we asked you to come back on this with some examples or something, or more definition of what we were talking about.
Yeah, so the way we finished the last time this was discussed is, could we have some examples? So I emailed some examples to all the planning commission members. Hopefully you all got that email.
Mm-hmm.
There were several examples around town. So what were the examples that were sent were, we were looking at where either a large home, a large accessory structure, or even a large lot for the given subdivision. So for example, if it's a 1 acre zone and someone came and combined 2 of those into a 2 acre parcel, that would be one of the examples I sent. There were others where we had large accessory structures. One of the examples I sent was a 25,000 square foot gymnasium building that's.
Do you have those images on your computer that would be easy for you to share? Because that was actually a little while ago.
Yeah. I don't have all
Okay.
the images readily available at my
No problem.
right now. But
Let's see if
I just wanted to, I was hoping to kind of give you some of the images and addresses. Some of them are useful to you maybe even drive around town and kind of go by to kind of get a better feel for it. Sometimes a picture doesn't do it justice. But anyways, so the discussion that we left off on was, is Alpine, do we want to consider limiting the size of what someone can build on their property?
I have that image if you want me to share my screen. I have that email with the images on it if you want me to share those.
Sure,
really
yeah,
quickly.
go ahead. Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great.
Let me share. Oh, sorry, you have disabled screen sharing. Did you add that back on?
Let me see if there's a way to.
Austin's all about control.
Well, we're just trying to be safe.
No, I think it's very
We've
smart.
heard of
Actually,
that.
I could just forward this email back to you.
Yeah, why don't you, I'll just forward it back to me and I'll pull it up here. I'll
Okay.
grab my
All
email.
right, give me just a minute and I'll find that again really quickly. There it is right there.
When requests come along for these kinds of projects, does the ordinance, if the pertinent ordinances talk about anything about blending in with the current architecture of the existing structure or matching neighboring structures or anything like that?
So as far as architecture is concerned, our ordinance does not, other than in the business commercial zone, which is our gateway zone. As far in the residential zones, we don't deal in what a building looks like. So
That's usually the HOA. If a subdivision has not HOA, but well, is it called an HOA when a subdivision has certain rules that they guide the so much percent has to be rock or whatever?
It'd be an HOA and it'd be the CCNRs that are recorded.
CCNRs was what I was thinking of. Yeah.
I happened to be in the Orem City Planning Office last week, and somebody was coming in with a request for a accessory building, and I was just eavesdropping on the conversation. And the person working the desk was just telling them that their ordinance requires that if you have brick on the home, the accessory building needed to be brick that matched it, or it had to match the brick or woodwork of the adjoining home or home adjoining to it. It seems like if we had something like that, I know it kind of gets into the weeds a little bit, and you normally consider it to be more of an HOA issue. But I think if we had more blending requirements, we wouldn't have these elephants. I don't think it's as much of
It's not a bad idea.
I don't think it's as much of a size issue of just something that's just out of place.
Actually, I disagree with that. I think it is a size issue. I think if you go around to the properties that Austin you see these homes are gigantic in neighborhoods and don't fit in. I mean, in here.
Now, control that by setbacks.
Well, and that's what I was going to bring up is that I don't know why does Alpine allow building across the multiple lots where it seems to violate the ordinances that we already have in place for setback requirements for each lot that we have.
So that's a good question, Ed. So in the examples, so what they've done is they've actually done a plat amendment where they've actually combined those two lots, and then it's just one lot. So we don't allow them to put a house, for example, right on the middle of a property line if they own both properties. And so if they were to build a home on that way, they'd have to combine the two and create one big lot, which would then have the same setbacks as any other lot in that zone.
But I mean, doesn't Alpine have the option of not allowing that plat amendment to go through? I mean, there's nothing that says by ordinance that we have to allow people to combine lots, is there?
There's also nothing by ordinance that says we can stop them from doing that.
I think it's a fairly common practice. Like someone will buy the lot next to them and put a tennis court on it.
Yeah, but I mean, if you go to some of these, I'm just not even thinking of the one that Mayor Stout was talking about, but the one that's like up by Preston, that's at the end of a cul-de-sac. I mean, it looks like the people have bought almost 3 of the lots at the cul-de-sac and is building a house across the whole end of the cul-de-sac. All the other houses are like on half-acre lots.
So that would be maybe the blending with both the furnishings on the outside of the house, but also perhaps size, like a % difference in size, if we felt like that was something we really wanted to get down into.
Yeah, I don't, one of the ways you can limit the size is you can allow people to combine the lots together, but you can kind of say, your maximum, structure that you're going to build must be shown to have fit on one of the lots, that you can't, you can't just build across the whole thing, that would allow people to give more space and whatever, but not to build large structures that go from end to end on multiple lots.
Austin, do you have those images? Did you get that?
Yeah, it's having a hard time loading the images.
I ask a question real quick?
Okay, Sylvia.
So I think we've discussed it before, but don't remember, why do we not want them? Is this a fire safety issue?
No, I think it was the neighboring families feeling like this devalued their property. Some of them look out their window and now they see the broad sign of a barn, one of them, when you look at the property, it shows 4 garage doors around a corner or something along those lines. And so it was the concern of what it does to the neighboring property values and the, what the neighbors thought that they were buying when they purchased their property and their land.
Well, and it seems like I remember Chief Williams saying something about how much harder it is to fight a fire in a huge building rather than just a regular size building.
No, I'm sure.
We'll have to check with him again. I thought that was something.
They may have some restrictions on code for sprinklers. Oh, go ahead.
There is anything over 10,000 square feet requires fire sprinklers and special restrictions. So a lot of these, almost all of these examples that we've given, they probably are required to have fire sprinklers, and they all have additional fire restrictions and requirements that a typical home may not have.
If I send this email to Jed, would he be able to pull it up?
Yeah, he might have a better chance. I think my computer's running so many different things at one time, it just can't handle it. Like it's running YouTube and Zoom and
pull anything up. Remember how my iPad won't
we're having technology issues here. Well, okay. I just felt like that had been a while, and so for myself I couldn't remember exactly what they looked like, but go ahead.
Sorry,
Well, the ones at Austin, there's the other one, Austin, that you referred to, which is the accessory building, which is being built across multiple lots. I mean, essentially, they've made a kind of they've made like a mesa above the neighborhood where they want to put this large building. I think the biggest problem, I think, is Jane, as you were saying, these buildings are out of character with the surrounding neighborhood, right?
And right now, that type of building, like let's look at a new subdivision. If someone built a new subdivision, is the only thing restricting someone from what size home they build the setbacks?
So setbacks are what would dictate how big it could be, but they may also have CC&Rs, which would also have restrictions on that. So a lot of it is controlled in subdivisions where they were, they enacted some CC&Rs to restrict the look, the size, all those types of things. So in general, that's not something that Alpine has the city's been involved in the past. It's mostly been kind of HOAs that have been involved in that.
But do the CC&Rs continue? I know, like, for example, one of the homes that we built, it had some CC&Rs. Once we were done building, though, there's no governing body left. So no, it doesn't matter even if the HOA went defunct and they didn't operate anymore, let's say it's 20 years after the subdivision was created, those CC&Rs are still recorded on the property. And so anybody that's signed or those CC&Rs, which would be anyone who has a property in that subdivision, essentially has agreed to that when they purchase the property, would have a legal right to enforce those CC&Rs on any of their neighbors. Okay, so it would take a neighbor complaint essentially to come to the city to do something.
Well, the city wouldn't be involved in that, so it would just be it would be a dispute between neighbors, and it could possibly be a legal battle.
If someone comes to the city with a remodel to get approved through engineering, do you look at the CC&Rs attached to the property?
No, we just look to see if it meets the building code, and if it does, and if it also meets our ordinance, then it gets approved.
Should we look at the CC&Rs that are attached to the property?
No, that's not a city document.
Where is that document recorded?
It's recorded with the county.
Seems like that's where it should, if there is a CC&R associated with a property and we're approving a building on it, doesn't it seem like we should know of that?
Again, a CC&R is a private document. It's not something that the city's involved in.
Okay, but yet it's recorded with the county, which is strange to me that it's
a legal document that's recorded on that property, and so whoever has ownership in that property that is thus obligated to that contract that's recorded on their property. However, enforcement is not done by the city.
Okay. And so basically enforcement is not done by anyone unless the neighbors choose to.
So typically, if there's an active HOA, they would enforce it and they might have fines. That's how, however, if it's, let's say the HOA no longer exists, then it would be, the only way to enforce it at that point would be for one of the neighbors to essentially sue the other one.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a very good setup. Okay, so let's look at these examples.
Okay, so here's example one. This home is on what used to be 2 lots. So the home is very wide. In fact, it doesn't even fit in this picture. So, it goes from here and it keeps on going off over to the left here. So that's how wide it is. It doesn't even fit in the picture. What they did is they bought 2 1-acre parcels and combined them. The home meets all of the setback requirements of the city, meets the height requirements. And then as far as the architectural style, again, the city's not involved in that. So what does this house look like? As long as it fits inside the setbacks and as long as it meets the city's height requirements, we would not typically be concerned with what it's going to look like.
And is that a completely new development? That's not an existing home that's been modified?
This is a brand new home.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not an addition.
Austin, I appreciate I appreciate the challenge you had in trying to take a picture.
Yeah, yeah, it was. And
because it kind of goes behind in here. One of the things you don't get by just looking at this is its relationship to the other homes that are on this cul-de-sac, right?
Right.
Um,
So the question is, does the city want to get in the business of telling people how big their home should be in relation to the homes around them?
But isn't that the kind of the purpose of why we zone in a certain way and we lay out lots, is to get a consistency in neighborhoods?
It's a good point.
zoning, I mean, the purpose of zoning is usually to restrict density, like higher density. So most
Usually
cities
not
are
the other
concerned with,
direction.
we don't want apartments, we don't want townhomes, but it usually doesn't go the flip side. We don't want mega mansions and, you know, in our city. Yeah, that's usually not the way.
And I agree with you, because Alpine has lasted all these years without having to kind of worry about this, but it does seem to be a rash around the city, because there's one up where I am too, which is not on the list, which is someone who's also building across 2 acres of land. It's on Box Elder Circle, and the house is huge. I mean, it's got 7-car garage, and it goes across the whole thing of the 2-acre, you know, front of the thing.
Yeah.
You know, there are large homes up here, but you know, this kind of even is larger than the largest homes they're building. So I think it's a problem that Alpine is, you know, do we need to wrestle with this, I guess, because it is kind of a rash that's starting to happen. Is larger.
What is the concern? What is the fear of for the city if these homes are built in the city? I'm just asking. I'm not saying,
So
I'm not
I
arguing.
think the reason why this came to Planning Commission is because, you know, there's been some structures built in neighborhoods where they don't feel that it blends in with the neighborhood, that it's you know, it's an albatross in the neighborhood. So that's kind of where it's coming from. To give you guys a better idea, so typically in 1 year, Alpine has about 35 house permits, building permits. And I would say probably 5 or 6 of those every year are these, you know, 20,000 plus square foot homes.
Right.
So that kind of gives you an idea of what percentage we're seeing of these. It is becoming, I would say, as the years go by, we are seeing more and more larger, things just keep getting bigger, basically.
Yeah. I wondered if there's any history of other cities when the economy takes a turn, if overbuilt homes become a liability to a city.
Jane, just to chime in on that, and Austin, to your point, and Ed was touching on this, I know a community that deals with this is, it's not Cottonwood Heights. What's the community just north?
Dimpledale or?
Mill Creek.
Around on the east bench.
There's Holiday, Mill Creek, Cottonwood Heights.
Yeah, exactly. Holiday, Mill Creek, all that.
Right.
A lot of that land has gotten so, you know, just the dirt has gotten so valuable that people will buy an existing home on it that's, you know, 30, 40, 50 years old, you know, that might be a relatively modest home, scrape it, and then just build, you know, what's been kind of pejoratively termed a McMansion.
Yes.
And just like the argument that Ed is making here, you've got a particular neighborhood of a certain size home, and then somebody buys a home like that goes up for sale, scrapes it, and builds something completely disproportionate to everything around it. And so obviously, it's just one of those things. We have this tension between a property owner who normally would like to be able to do with his or her property what they want, as long as they comply with, you know, city development codes. But the flip side is you have neighbors who will say, look, you're building something that size and scope is so far disproportional to anything around you that that this is just an eyesore.
Yeah. And I think as the city
so
ages,
they go to cities and say, hey, you need to do something about that. So might look and see, for example, what Holiday has done with that, and maybe Salt Lake, because I know those are issues in places like that.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea to look at those. I think it is a concern as the city ages, because as Alpine is a desirable place to live, and as people want to build new homes here, I think this will become more of an issue of existing homes being scraped and new homes being built up where they were.
The other thing is that it affects the home values of the people that live in that neighborhood. That,
Right.
For example, you know, it's probably the cul-de-sac one is probably not a gigantically great example of this, but you know, if you were to have built in that neighborhood, you would have seen that there were 2 lots at the end of the cul-de-sac. Those,
Right.
when they were built on, they might have obscured your view of the mountainside behind it, but you never imagined that you would get a house that would go across all of it that you would never be able to see in between the homes.
Right.
And so by that effect, you're affecting affecting the value of the homeowners that are adjacent to these properties when they do things like that.
Yeah. Let's look at these other pictures.
It can increase.
And I could also just about guarantee you, because it's you know, neighborhood near me, is there are places in Alpine, for example, the older historic homes right along Main Street, east of Main Street and south of 200 North, that as time goes on, you give it another decade or so, that dirt just becomes so valuable that people will start buying those old homes, tearing them down and building large homes. I mean, you will start seeing the holiday problem in Alpine
Yeah.
sooner than later.
Yeah. Troy, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, it can add to the value of the home too. I mean,
That's true.
I mean, I think that's kind of what Alpine's about, is the big homes. And I think most people like them. I think what they don't like is the outside or the, what do you call it? The accessory buildings, you know? I think that's the issue. That to me is,
it's definitely probably an even more of that's another issue and maybe more bothersome to neighbors. So what is this that we're looking at here?
Okay, so what we're looking at here, this is a 30,000 square foot recreation center. It has a full-size basketball court, racquetball court, tennis court, all inside this structure. This one, I mean, it's a massive structure. Normally we wouldn't, you know, you don't see that as when you typically think of an accessory structure, it's usually not at that scope. However,
is it underground?
Yeah, if you go up there, this is all you see. It's underground, so it's completely underground.
Okay.
You wouldn't even know it's there if you're at the top of the cul-de-sac. You can see the lake right over the top of it. They are still going to build a house that goes with it, which is another 20 to 30,000 square feet. But
on top of it?
No, to the left of it, and then that on top of that would be kind of more recreation area. But yeah, I mean, that both that home and their accessory structure, I guess, you know, are both larger than your average.
Going to end up like 60,000 square feet then, with a 30,000 square foot accessory and 20 to 30,000 square foot home.
Correct. Yeah. So it's the final square footage will probably be about 50 to 60,000 square feet.
At what point does it become a commercial building? I guess as long as you're living in it and using it as your residence.
Yeah, I mean, this accessory structure is it could be comparable to many rec centers. I mean, it's their own private rec center, essentially.
I do want to point out on this one, though, you know, this one's a little deceiving in terms of the picture, in terms of its impact, because that's at the top of the cul-de-sac.
Right.
If the cul-de-sac actually goes downhill to exit the cul-de-sac, and at the bottom of the cul-de-sac, they have built a gigantic mound of dirt that levels this off.
Interesting.
If you were living across the street from this, what you would have across the street from this is essentially a hillside that has been now man-made to accommodate this underground structure with a house that's going to sit on top of it, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
I really need to go look at these.
Yeah, this would be an interesting one to look at, because as Ed was saying, down on the other side, just straight ahead in this picture, there's a cul-de-sac right around here-ish. And so the two homeowners that are in the back of that cul-de-sac that face this,
Yeah.
Well, like he said, it's basically now they used to look at a natural hillside and now it's a man-made hillside essentially.
Interesting.
So that's an
Okay.
example. Let's see if another one loaded here. So this is just an empty property, but someone has purchased this with the intent of combining two lots
Okay.
into one. That's in the Heritage Hills subdivision. My other example here has not loaded yet.
Okay. That's on Chapman Court, huh?
Yeah, the one that
While you're waiting for that to load, I really like Alan's idea of seeing if some of the older neighborhoods in Salt Lake have put any ordinances in place. Would you be willing to look into that for us?
So I've actually pulled so this discussion came to the Planning Commission in 2009, and back then they were calling this the Monster House Ordinance. And in the research that they did there, they pulled up an example from Salt Lake Council limits the house sizes. This was in Salt Lake City infill standards. And so, well, I'm not sure exactly which part of town this was in, but they looked at things like you can only have so much garage showing on the front of your house. So you can't just have a whole front facade of the house be nothing but garage. They looked at other things like how, the square footage. Those were some of the things that were considered. So that is a good example. So maximum height, front yard setback, lot coverage. So how much of the lot is covered in structure versus landscaping. And I think they said 40% was the limit that they had approved. Limit garage width to 50% of the facade of the lot. They also looked at detached garages. This probably would be a good thing maybe to forward.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But that's also over 10 years old too. And I'm curious if some of the cities would have put something into place since then.
Yeah.
Or retracted that.
Or retracted it, exactly. Maybe they found out it was a legal problem.
Exactly.
That's an excellent point. So yeah, I'd be curious if we could just take a look at, see what currently some of those cities have.
It's an interesting conundrum because, I mean, overall, the building applications that we look at every year on average, square footage is getting bigger, lot size is getting bigger, accessory structures are getting bigger. That's just the trend that we've seen over the last few years. And so do we cap that? Does that limit who wants to come to Alpine? Is that going to limit future growth? That's something to consider as well.
There's not that many more developments to go in as well.
Well, what's going to happen is once all the existing lots are gone, they're probably going to buy
two old lots,
combine them together and build a big house.
That's what I think you're going to see.
What's going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of people buy two lots and want to have that plat amended.
Well, and I think it would be reasonable to try to think of some way to identify, what is obviously overdone and how can we limit that?
Or, yeah, what percent?
Like when you're talking about the garage faces, that's a good one.
Yeah. Or like you said, would you say that the homes within X distance, that it couldn't be more than X percent larger than those, or something like that? Would that benefit?
The garage discussion the point that you bring up, so this image is loading, it looks like it's almost loaded here, is a good example of a lot of garages. So basically every single front of this structure, it's an addition onto an existing home, but every part of this new addition
that faces the street
is a garage essentially.
Yeah.
Which is obviously kind of outrageous compared to everything else in the neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the same thing with some of these buildings where they're so much bigger than everything else. It seems to me like that is. I mean, yeah, I know growing up, the house next to me moved in. They built a house and they filled every inch of the lot that they could with the house, and it was way out of place in the neighborhood.
Yeah. I like the concept of perhaps looking at a blending ordinance where, like you said, it's more of a, it doesn't completely limit someone, but it puts some type of percentage of garages or percentage of size that maybe prevents it from being so disproportionate. Man, Austin, we got to get you some more memory or something.
Yeah.
Or a faster internet site.
I have a fiber internet, so it's not the internet.
Wow.
It's the computer.
Yeah, do I need to submit something to the mayor? Get this guy a better computer, buy some memory for it. Anyway, I think we've seen it, but we can finish loading that.
You can kind of
leave it and let it load. But
yeah, I'll just let it load in the background.
So sorry, we're just continuing this discussion. We're not acting on this, right? We're still discussing the possibilities.
Yes, this is just a discussion item. There's not necessarily a motion, but
I guess the only other thing I would have to say is that I also, having said what I've said, I still would hate to be limited on what I wanted to do on my property, right? If I wanted to build a garage, or it would be frustrating to be limited by.
Right, but would you feel okay if it was, a percent, like you could do it, but you had certain percentage or a certain restrictions to build it within, maybe might be agreeable. I don't know.
Right. It might be, but I'm sure obviously some people would not agree.
Yeah. What would you guys like?
I'm a pretty strong proponent of personal property rights, and so I'm having a hard time digesting how we would limit it.
Yeah.
I'd really like to see what other cities are doing who've had similar issues.
Yeah. I mean, your realty background should be a good insight for us on this, Sylvia.
Should.
Maybe that's something that you could find a little bit of information out as far as like home values, like what happens to home values when there's a home that's really disproportionate.
Well, the funny thing is there's the old saying that you don't want to buy the biggest house in the neighborhood and you don't want to buy the smallest house in the neighborhood, because the size of the houses around you affect the value of your home. So a very large home is not going to be worth as much in a neighborhood where the houses are not similar to it. So they're like taking their own risk doing that.
I don't think, that probably money is not the concern in these situations.
And it's really, as a realtor, it's really hard to value these because there's nothing similar to it anyway.
Right.
Yeah,
I bet. Does anyone else have any suggestions of what we need to go forward? I like the idea of getting some information that's current from other cities. Does anybody else have anything that they think would help if we brought it to the table when we discuss this in the future?
It seems to me, Jane, for the most part, most of these issues are going to be dealt with by CC&Rs recorded with the county along with your deed. And if certain neighbors don't like what's going on and it violates the CC&Rs, they have recourse through the courts. So it seems to me like if as a city, we made the decision that, look, private property rights are what they are. If you want to buy 2 lots and build a giant home on them, great. If you want to buy 3 lots and build a freaking castle, buy 3 lots. It's America, private property. Do what you want, combine them, as long as you are in compliance with development codes, setbacks, etc. Or we say, you know what, we just don't want the McMansion problem. We don't want a guy coming in and buying 2 or 3 lots, dwarfing his neighbors around him. So we're going to have a city ordinance that says that you can buy all the lots you want, but there's a certain building envelope, a percentage on a particular lot, and you cannot combine lots and build a McMansion or a castle.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like you kind of go one way or the other.
Yeah. Now, let's see, was Ed, did you have something to say there?
Yeah, I was just going to say along the same lines of what Alan was. I would be curious to see if the other communities, when we look into this, do they have restrictions in terms of when in terms of combining lots for larger buildings? Because I'm sure these are things that Lehigh and Highland and even our neighbors here in in Utah County have had to wrestle with.
Yeah. I think that's great. I agree with what everybody said, that, it's kind of seems like there's the two trains of thought of just, people can do what they want. And I think the best idea for moving forward right now is for us to get some information from other cities that's current and see what they did, and maybe even if they had some of these things, like you said, if they ended up redacting them later. Or to see, what types of issues exist. So I think even if it takes a couple meetings before you have time to look at that, Austan, and maybe some of us can do a little bit of research on our own as well. Let's take a look at what other cities have done.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I guess one question I would have is what's kind of the general appetite of the Planning Commission? Are you more pro property rights, or are you, thinking maybe we need to limit the size of these things?
So in recent memory, I can't remember ever seeing CC&Rs that have a maximum. They always have a minimum because they want the houses to be kind of the same size. I guess the maximum is kind of reined in by the setbacks, but when you put two lots together, that's a whole different story. I just really don't, would like to understand more. Was it only neighbors, or did someone come up with the thinking that other cities have made maximums? Should we have maximums too? I'd like to hear more how this just got started.
This got started, it was a request from Mayor Stout.
It was a request, what, say that
It was
again?
a request on this image that's on the screen right now.
Yeah, it was a request from the mayor for us to wrestle.
Oh,
with.
from the mayor, okay.
Yeah, because of this that we're looking at right now, which makes it from three sides of the house, all you can see are garages. And so that's what all the neighbors look at is garages all the way around.
Is that what's facing the street?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's a corner
actually,
lot. So you're looking from the corner
lot. So it faces both of the streets, and it has that little diagonal one too.
Yeah. So it's got basically three sides of garages, and that's what all the neighbors look at. And then everything else is on the other side. And so that's his question is.
So the main entrance is on the other side?
This is an addition onto a home. So over here where my mouse is, that's the existing home. And he's just expanded his home. And now he's adding a new garage onto his home.
Oh,
I think
my
he bought,
goodness.
did he buy the lot next door and basically make it into a garage?
Correct. Yeah, he bought so this is he combined two lots and then bought the neighboring lot and then put his garage on the next door lot.
And so maybe this is more of not so much a size. Maybe you don't have an appetite for restricting the size that people want to build their homes, but maybe we want to look more at a percentage of the facing structure being a garage or things like that. Maybe that's more of an issue that we are concerned about.
Or the percentage of the size of the accessory building in relation to the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of just have to question what their motives are, Are they gonna sneak a business in there?
They just have a lot of
and
toys.
I mean this with all respect, but is it gonna become a polygamist home? I mean, why would they want something that big,
So yeah, well,
toys.
This home in particular, that's all garage space. And so you can fit a large boat, you can fit four-wheelers, you can fit every kind of toy you can think of in there. And then also a place where you can work on your hot rod. So this guy loved his neighborhood. He just wanted more space for his toys.
It could actually be a fire engine station if you really
It could.
Right. But the structure, this auxiliary structure, I mean, it's you know, the addition actually dwarfs the size of the home. When you see them next to one another.
Is the architecture similar?
No,
I think that's probably something we ought to consider.
yeah, this is more of a concern to me than somebody building a 60,000 square foot house and combining their lots. But this remodeling or accessory structures in an existing neighborhood, I think that's more of a concern.
Yeah, I'll be honest.
This
I
is
would
not an
personally be in
accessory
favor
building.
of
This
some
is
type
part
of
of
an
their-
ordinance that did not allow people to buy multiple lots, combine them into building one giant home. Because my feeling is, look, if you really want to build a castle, buy 5 acres somewhere.
Go buy a castle property.
You know, but you're surrounding homeowners who feel like, hey, these are all 1 acre lots and have built homes consistent with 1 acre lot properties. And all of a sudden comes King Arthur and his castle. It's just inconsistent.
Yeah. See, I just we kind of go back and forth, don't we?
Well, I would lean, you know, Austin kind of asked the question, and I lean in the same direction that Alan is leaning.
That if you combine lots, that you're restricted to the building size of one lot or something like that.
If you want to build a big house, then go and get a lot that's, you know, that's 5 acres.
That's zoned for that.
But don't try to, you know, buy multiple ones in a, you know, a half acre or a 1 acre area and combine them together, because then it makes.
But again, we can't tell people what to do like that.
Well,
I think Marla was making a good point. She said she was starting to say that this is not an accessory building. This is an addition to the main building, I think is what she was trying to say.
In fact, I think it's the addition that presents more of the problem than the accessory building in this kind of size.
Well, you couldn't have done that if you weren't able to buy the lot next door and just extend his house onto it.
Right. Most additions are restricted by the setback. So I can keep adding onto my house, but once I hit my setback limit, that's it.
You're done.
Unless you keep on buying lots that are.
You could just expand to the next lot and the next lot. And you know, that's a valid point. If you think about that legally, are you saying that this person can now buy the lot next to this and then extend onto that? And the lot next, you know, at what point does it end? At what point? I mean, we expect common sense to reign at some point, but if we're talking about that, you know, is there a point at which people, you know?
Well, technically, no. If you could buy 2 lots, then you could buy 4 lots, then you could buy 5 lots.
Right.
I mean, currently we have 0 restriction. And Austin says it happens, you know, 4 or 5 times a year. That means, you know, another 10 years, we'll have, you know, 40 to 50 of these.
Yeah.
And we're seeing some, you know, we've seen the most common thing is to combine 2 lots, but we have seen some also where they combine 3 lots.
Wow.
4.
Usually on the 3 lot ones that I've seen, it's to give the home some more space in between the road and their house. They want a buffer.
They want space.
Yeah.
Not building.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
again, if you want a buffer, you can buy 2 lots. You can buy 3 lots. Build your home in the middle, and then make sure nobody builds on either side of you.
Right. But the building space would be restricted.
Non-conglomeration, for lack of a better term, ordinance that would prevent people from, you know, building that's out of.
So you're saying that the building space would be restricted to one of the lots? Not even in the middle, but you could have the same amount of space on a building pad that would be allowed if you had 1 lot, but you could still combine your lots. I mean, these are all great ideas. I think, are we good to get a little more information on this and come back? I think this has given us a lot of food for thought. I don't think we're going to come to a conclusion here tonight.
I can gather some information on what other cities are doing in the last few years, and if there's any examples of other cities that have done anything like this.
Great.
You can continue the discussion on that if you like.
And I haven't driven by these other things. I don't know if all of you have, but I think it's probably wise for us to all go take a look at that, like Ed has done, because just as I mentioned before on the Bangalore property, there's nothing like actually going and seeing it in person to give you some perspective. So.
And I also want to comment, these are just a handful of examples. I could actually give you probably a much bigger list of other examples. So
I actually wouldn't mind having a few more examples if you've got some really choice ones for us, Austan.
yeah, I'll see if I can add a couple more to this.
In your free time as you're driving around town, okay?
I'll send you the one that's around the corner for me.
Would you? Yeah. That'd be great. Yeah, give Austan some directions.
Yeah,
so he
if
doesn't
any
have
of
to
you have one in your neighborhood and you'd like to share it with the group, maybe you could know or something. I don't know.
That'd be great. Well, let's move on, especially in the interest of time. I feel like, though, that we've had some really good discussions tonight, that it's kind of nice in some ways to deal with a few things that aren't just dotting the I's and crossing the T's on an ordinance, honestly. Okay, communication. Does anyone have any communications that they would like to bring up? What did we decide about the 4th of July week? We talked about that. Now I can't remember what we decided. That was the 7th or something?
It's the 7th, yeah. So the 4th is on a Saturday, I believe, and the 7th would be that following Tuesday.
Right. And so is everyone going to be around for that following Tuesday, or is that okay if we go ahead and hold that? Because we need to make sure we have a quorum.
I think my husband's out of vacation, so I should be home.
I'm going to be flying home that night.
So you will not be able to join?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'm iffy, heading out of town, going to be up at a cabin in the mountains that I think has Wi-Fi.
But may or may not.
Sure.
How many people do we need for a quorum? And do we have, what are the agenda items? Maybe we can take a look at that, Austan. If there's some really important agenda items, I definitely don't want to do it without the majority of the members here.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's gonna, I mean, a quorum is 4 people. So
right.
If we don't have 4 people, then
okay.
there's no point in really having a meeting because we can't make a recommendation. Let me just see if I have kind of an idea of what might be coming up on future.
We've lost, Jane, you look like a shadow.
I know, I'm sorry. The lighting in this room I'm at, I sit by a window during the day and work from here, and I usually don't need to use the lights. So I've never really tested this with the lighting. And this is an older home that doesn't have the lights in the ceiling. They only have plugs for lamps. Oh. You know how the 70s homes were, where all the plugs and there was a switch.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you're getting the glow.
Get your son in there with
studio lighting.
Yeah. Studio lighting, maybe
I could go like this and I look like I have a halo on my head, you know.
You always look like you have a halo, Jane. What are you talking about?
Okay, yeah, I it's hard to say what's going to be on that agenda right now.
Let's just stay in touch then, Austan, on that. And if everybody could just check their schedules and kind of verify who's going to be around. I need to verify myself if I'm going to be around. And that brings up a second thing is, do we have a vice chair right now? I mean, wasn't it Bryce?
It was Bryce. That's correct. So no, we do not.
I'm just thinking about that, thinking we should probably replace that person. So maybe we could put that on the next agenda meeting, wherever that everyone is at. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything
ideally,
else?
Would probably want everyone there.
Right. That's what I was saying is wait for one that everyone's at. So anything else?
So I would like to maybe put on something that we can discuss maybe in a future agenda, not certainly tonight, but I'd like to understand what we consider to be kind of a billboard within our city. Because I'm wondering, as I enter the city, I go down Main Street and I see this trailer that seems to advertise
yes.
therapist or boxing lessons or whatever, right? And that's one example. But if Daylight Donuts were to go over to the veterinarians and say, can we put a trailer with an advertisement in there? Had those businesses, all the businesses kind of doing that, because it's off their premises, you'd have a series of trailers with advertisements on them.
Yeah,
to me,
that's a great point.
Yeah, constitutes a restriction because we do have billboard restrictions within the city. So
Great.
maybe as a discussion item in a future one, we could kind of discuss what we consider to be.
That's a great idea. Do you want to email that to Austin so he has a copy of that his brain's younger than mine, but I know how I am.
Will do.
Email would be helpful even with the younger brain.
Even with your young brain, huh?
Will do.
Okay. Good point. And if anyone else ever has anything, that's perfectly great to bring up. Let's go ahead and take a look at the minutes then.
I did go through them, Jane, and on page 5, line 37, it says that, I have to remember it because I'm not looking at them. It said that you said you said something about there being 4 more homes for Summit Point, and I don't know why you wouldn't say 8. So I don't know.
Because it was already approved. It was already approved for 4.
Oh,
and so this
that's
is an
correct then.
addition of 4 more homes. Yeah, so that was correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So
I also found a couple minor things. Just email Marla.
Okay.
I had a couple things too, and also I just emailed Marla.
Okay.
Maybe they're the same ones I have.
Are they, Jed, are they anything we need to bring up or just minor?
I don't know how big a deal it is. Like one of them, I said it was a 24-foot road. It's actually 26.
Right. No, that's important to get that correct in there.
Okay, so page 3, line 15, it says 24-foot road. It should be 26. Page 3, line 16, there's a word called menacious. I've never even heard that word before. I don't know.
I know. I was wondering about that as well. What is that?
I don't know.
What's the context?
Okay, strike that whole sentence though. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it says the menacious for the gate access would mostly be on the Draper side. I have no idea.
It says I said it too, so I don't even know what that word is.
You stuttered.
Yeah.
Maybe you said that. Yeah.
I'm going to Google the definition of that word. Maybe Marla's got some menacious.
Better vocabulary than
that
us.
is actually, it was probably autocorrect. It is red, orange, red, the color of red lead.
See, that makes no sense with the context of what we were talking about.
No.
Anyways, page 3, line 37, it says a 14-foot and 12-foot inch culinary water lines. It's 14-inch and 12-inch. So, and then just a couple little typos. I emailed all this stuff to Marla. So.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate you checking those things because especially on items like this, I think those numbers are important that we have those correct in there.
So I have a question. What is the effect of Ed seeking to withdraw his I on the Blue Bison and change it to a nay? And can that happen? And if so, do the minutes need to be amended to reflect his change of vote?
So we talked to David Church about that. You can't do that. The only way you can do that is you can, in a meeting, request that the Planning Commission reconsider their motion and take a revote.
Okay. And that has to be done in a meeting.
Correct.
Well, and Jed, is that for the Planning Commission or the City Council? Because the City Council makes the final decision, and if the final decision to approve, then they can go back and say, I want a revote on it. But the Planning Commission is just a recommendation, and that's all it is.
Right,
Yeah,
but can someone still change? Does the same thing apply to a recommendation from the Planning Commission as applies to a vote from the City Council, though?
It does. So even though it is just a recommendation, you still have to request to take another vote on the motion.
Okay.
In a meeting.
Okay. So is that done during the communications portion of a meeting?
No. I think it's got to be on the agenda item. That's
Okay.
gotta, yeah.
Okay, so Ed, I'll talk to you about that separately. And if we want to add that as an agenda item, let's talk about that offline. Okay, Ed?
Yeah, I don't think it's that important. My wanting to move to the NA was when I was researching the general plan. I had more concerns about were we needing to amend the general plan of the city before we could actually even approve this in here.
Right.
So it's really kind of a food for thought, because I don't know the answer as to the general plan is the one that we're using from 2007.
Yeah, and that's a valid concern. And so,
is the street master plan part of the general plan, specifically, or is it, I don't know these answers, which made me concerned.
Yeah. Okay. Jed, I think we should, or Ed, I think we should talk about that though, and even talk to David Church about it possibly. So I appreciate that. Thank you for that feedback.
So the Blue Bison deal didn't get taken up in the last council meeting?
The last council meeting, the agenda was completely full, and we've also, so some of the concerns that there's some red lines that still need to be corrected as well. So it couldn't have made it on the last agenda because it was already a full agenda, and right now we're determining when it's going to be on the next meeting based on whether or not they're able to get red lines back to us and other details.
Okay. Do we have a motion on the minutes? You're muted, Sylvia.
I'll move that they be approved.
Second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Sylvia, second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. All right. So approved with the changes noted. So yeah, I think we're done. Meeting dismissed.
Thank you, Jane.
Good.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks,
Hey,
everybody.
Jed, can
Yeah.
you stay on for just 1 second? I had a quick question for you. We can
Sure.
pretend that we're walking around the benches. Okay, is YouTube turned off?
1 second, let me turn it off.